Hello everyone, welcome back to New Zealand Mysteries. This is TJ. Today we're looking into one of the strangest disappearances in New Zealand that I can think of, and it's all about a guy called Jim Donnelly. Now, just a couple of things before we get started. I seriously don't mean to offend anybody at all by making this. I'm just going ahead and using information that I'm finding on the internet and putting it all together in one video. nzmissing@gmail.com is where you can find me. We are on Facebook, we are on YouTube, and we are on podcasts. Now, let's have a look at this case. So, while looking for information and researching this story, I found that Radio New Zealand, RNZ, did a podcast series called Lost, or The Lost, and they did an episode on Jim Donnelly. So I'm actually going to read from the transcript, or read from rnz.co.nz, and let's go. On Monday, the 21st of June 2004, Jim Donnelly signed into work as usual. 13 years later, he still hasn't signed out. The 43-year-old father of two worked at the Glenbrook steel mill south of Auckland for nearly 20 years. Now let's take a quick look at this steel mill. Now I must say, if I have bloopers in this one, I'm going to try not to, but my computer is in a very bad state, and even editing basic is really hard. So I'm going to try really hard not to have my mouth mush too much. So having a look, it says New Zealand Steel Limited is the owner of the Glenbrook steel mill. The steel mill located 40 kilometres south of Auckland in Glenbrook, New Zealand. And if you are from out of New Zealand, where this red dot is here in the North Island, close to the top, that's where Auckland is. The mill was constructed in 1968 and began producing steel products in 1969. Currently, the mill produces 650,000 tonnes of steel a year, which is either domestically used or exported. Over 90% of New Zealand's steel requirements are produced at Glenbrook. And let's get back to it. Jim's wife Tracy is still trying to find out what happened to him. She believes the answer lies in the mill where he was last seen alive. There has been no sighting of him apart from inside the mill. There has been no sighting of him leaving. There has been no sighting of him since he was seen on the gantry, she says. It makes me incredibly sad and upset that this wonderful person who was my husband and father of my children disappeared without a trace. The couple's children, Liam and Siobhan, were aged 7 and 5 when Jim disappeared. They are now growing up. I'm going to have all the links below in the description boxes so you can go to these podcasts yourself and have a listen and investigate further. On the day Jim went missing, Tracy called him at work about 8 a.m. and became increasingly worried when she didn't hear back. Jim had missed a 9 a.m. meeting and was nowhere to be found, yet his car was still parked at the mill car park. He was reported missing about 6 p.m. Tracy believed he may have had an accident, but the theory shifted. Search and rescue teams thought he may have had a mental breakdown and was actively evading them. Jim had been behaving strangely in the days before his disappearance. Tracy and Jim had planned to spend the night at an Auckland hotel on the Saturday, but out of nowhere he said he had a meeting to go to. A Saturday night meeting made no sense to Tracy, but no matter how hard she tried to find out more, Jim wouldn't tell her where he was going. He hired a suit and headed off. It's still not clear why he needed the suit. So already things are starting to sound a little strange, but it gets stranger. Things between the pair didn't get any better the next day when again Jim said he had to divert a crisis and a waste. Tracy was confused. Crisis and a waste. That's a very odd thing to say. Some of his co-workers described Jim's behaviour as strange on the Monday too. 5 days after Jim was last seen at work, workers at the mill found his hard hat next to an acid tank in a restricted area of the mill. The area had already been searched. The tank was drained and some of Jim's things were found inside. The acid wasn't strong enough to do significant damage. His house keys have never been found. So in the acid, his wallet was in there, and there's some other things we'll find out as well as we keep going. Who put Jim's things there? That question remains unanswered. The hard hat was not tested for fingerprints, which just bugs me. What a simple thing to, if you're having a strange disappearance, and the fact that things were found inside the acid vat, which is just beyond strange. Fingerprinting the hard hat seems like a pretty, well, one of the first things you'd do, straight up, things police should do, but it just doesn't make sense to me. The search for Jim was eventually scaled back. Police investigating his disappearance looked into 4 scenarios: an accident, a suicide, a staged disappearance, and foul play. David Glossop, the area commander of County's Manukau West area, investigated Jim's case in 2008. He says, every other investigation into missing persons or into homicide, you can anchor yourself around some facts, he says. In Jim's case, there are more questions than answers, and there continues to be more questions than answers. Everything is possible in this life. Those 4 scenarios, each and every one of those is still an option. Tracy doesn't think police did enough at the time. Mill workers were only interviewed on a voluntary basis. Police officers were escorted throughout the search. She also feels that the mill has been less than cooperative, including refusing access to a private investigator Tracy wanted to hire. She feels they failed to protect a staff member and have yet to be held accountable. And I can definitely understand, put myself in her shoes. I mean, this is the last place your husband went, and the events are all strange surrounding his disappearance, and you want answers. And you're thinking, well, why won't they let us find these answers? I can definitely feel her frustration. That's, very sad. Mill owner New Zealand Steel refused to be interviewed for the podcast, but in a statement took issue with Tracy's frustrations, saying it cooperated fully with the police investigation, including full searches of our site and support for those affected. New Zealand Steel has not received any further queries from authorities since the original investigation, but would of course be willing to help if that changed. Tracy says, to me, it's completely illogical. I've always been brought up to think that there's a logical explanation for everything and it all comes out in good time. I'd like some answers. I'd like to know why I have to live through this and my children have had to live without their dad. Do you have any information on Jim's whereabouts? And obviously the Crimestoppers number 0800 555 111, which is completely anonymous. Counties Manukau Police 09 261 1300, but I am going to have this in the description boxes below. Now, it's hard enough for anyone that has a family member just missing, but missing under these strange circumstances, I just couldn't imagine. Right, let's move on to the next part. So we're following on with another article by rnz.co.nz, and it's still from his wife Tracy Donnelly, which you can get and listen to on the podcast. Tracy Donnelly kissed her husband and waved him off to work 13 years ago, and for her and her children, life as they knew it stopped that day. She wants to know why. Where am I? Who am I now? My life was normal. We were a family of 2 adults and 2 children. Then one day, everything changed. On June 21st, 2004, my husband, Jim Donnelly, did not come home from work at the Glenbrook Steel Mill, where he worked for nearly 20 years. Life as I knew it stopped existing that day. It was like I was on a speeding train, which took me from a place where I knew who I was to a place I didn't want to go. The husband who loved and cared for us disappeared into ether. As I write this, my mind takes me back to a boardroom at the mill 13 years ago, while search and rescue were combing the fields next door to the site. I spoke with psychologists and search and rescue coordinators about Jim's behaviour before that Monday morning. We all agreed he behaved bizarrely over the weekend, but they were sure he wasn't a suicide risk. I was told maybe he had a breakdown. Either way, they were sure he would be found. The weather wasn't great, and I couldn't help but worry about him being out there. Was he warm enough? Did he have shelter? I spent days at the mill waiting. At home, I tried to keep it all together, especially in front of the children. This was still week 1, and I hadn't told the children yet, just in case we found him. I was sure we would, because we were a normal family. This sort of thing doesn't happen to us, but it did. I think I would have made the same decision in that, not telling the kids. I think I would have thought, he's coming home. He might be sick, or he might be a bit hurt or something, but he's coming home. So a week in, some of his stuff was found inside an acid vat at the mill. His hard hat was placed outside the vat. Did Jim put it there? That idea is illogical to me. Maybe Jim didn't put it there. Maybe someone else did. Who, why, and how? The mill is supposed to be a secure site. That's what they keep telling us. How did this happen in the middle of search and rescue, with mill staff all knowing there was a missing person on site? Why did no one see anything? I can only presume someone knows. I could go on from here describing the minutes, hours, days, months as I moved from then to now. While the immense pain has subsided somewhat, I am no closer to the truth about why and how this loss occurred. Only that I still find Jim in the children's smiles and the way they raise an eyebrow. He is always around. I am still looking for the answer. I still hope to find out what happened. The facts. Jim's car was in the car park at the steel mill. Jim changed from his civvies into the work uniform. Jim signed into the area where he worked that morning and never signed out. Jim was last seen inside the steel mill near his office. My opinion has never changed. To me, the answer lies in the mill, the last place Jim was seen. I approached the mill management with a request to allow access for a private investigator. This request was declined. I found this very frustrating. Didn't they want this mystery solved? Jim was one of their workers. How will I get answers if the mill isn't cooperating? The steel mill management was more than happy for people to think Jim left their site voluntarily, but there is no evidence to show or prove this. What are they worried about? Why in this day and age of workplace safety haven't they been made to be more accountable? Are safety regulations just a farce? They're to only say we implemented notices and advise of hazards. Aren't the mill bosses responsible for the loss of a worker who signed into work and never signed out? It's fallen on me to prove he went missing while still in the mill. Surely it should be on the mill to prove otherwise. I feel powerless against a corporation that doesn't care. Some very, very big words from this lady. It's obvious how she feels about the mill. And it says RNZ sort of response from the mill. A spokesman said, New Zealand Steel fully cooperated and assisted with the police investigation into Jim Donnelly's disappearance, including full searches of our site, and provided support where it could to the people affected. I'm going to be really interested to see what you guys think, what theories you have in the comments below. Just be kind, because there is a chance that his older children now and his wife may read them, because I have not been able to reach out to her. So just be kind. So I'm on newshub.co.nz, and what I'm about to play is a video from a program here in New Zealand called The Project on Channel 3. But just quickly, there are about 400 people listed as missing in New Zealand. For the past 5 months, The Project has been investigating one of the most mysterious cases that of Auckland man Jim Donnelly. Mr. Donnelly left for work 13 years ago and was never seen again. Bear in mind this was made in 2017. So it would be 16. It's nearly 17 years ago now. He arrived at work and later in the morning was seen by his colleagues pacing around, which is the last known sighting. An hour later, Mr. Donnelly's wife rang his mobile phone but couldn't get through. His colleagues then started looking for the father and found his car was still at work in the parking lot. Later that day, he was reported missing to the police, I should say. 5 days after he was reported missing, his hard hat was found next to an acid tank. His belongings were found inside, but police concluded the acid was not strong enough to dissolve a body. More than a decade later, the family has been left with 4 possibilities: accidental death, suicide, a staged disappearance, or murder. The project returns to the day he vanished in the first part of a special series entitled Missing Jim. So I'm going to play this video for you now. Please give us a thumbs up or a thumbs down if you like or dislike the video. Check that subscribe button, pretty please, and hit the notification bell to all if you want to be notified whenever we release a case. You can support the channel, buymeacoffee.com/NZMysteries. Buy me a $3 coffee. It will help go towards the computer fund, I guess, when this one finally gives out very soon. Alright, thank you very much. I'm going to play this video for you all on the way out. Thank you. Apologise for my computer. I'm so sorry. But we'll leave it at that because this computer's just not going to play it. I'm about to cry. I'll leave the link into the description box below. Please tell me what you think. Even though you haven't been able to see much.
It was the last trace we see of the quiet.
It's not so. I'm going to leave my blunders in because I don't even think my computer's actually going to let me edit it. I'm going to give it a go. Thank you so much. I'm so sorry that my computer is just not working properly, and hopefully we can talk about it in the comments anyway. Okay, see you guys. Thank you.